A week of dinners inspired by fresh produce from my garden. Started the week off with some fresh focaccia. Focaccia is the best summer bread because it's super easy to make and requires very little effort. Perfect for those busy summer days. It's also a great way to use all of those fresh summer herbs. I bloom the yeast for about 10 minutes before adding in my flour, my olive oil, and salt. I cover it and let it sit on the counter for a couple hours until it's doubled in size. Then I transfer it to a baking pan and let it rise for about an hour and a half. I'm keeping it simple with the toppings. I just added chopped rosemary, a lot of olive oil, and salt. And I bake it in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes at 425. We love to dip it in olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Paired the focaccia with a summer squash and sausage rigatoni with sunburst squash from my garden and zucchini from the local farmer's market because my zucchini is doing awful this year. Diced up the garlic and onions, and I cubed the sunburst squash and grated the zucchini. Using mild Italian sausage without the casings, and I cooked the sausage first, then set it aside and left all of the oil in the pan and added my garlic and onion. Once the garlic and onions were fragrant, I added my sunburst squash, cooked that down for a couple minutes, and then added my grated zucchini, and then added butter, chicken broth, and cream. I let that simmer for a couple minutes and then added some freshly grated Parmesan. Then I put the sausage back in and added the cooked pasta. Added salt and pepper, half a lemon's juice, a little bit of garlic powder, and more Parmesan. Then at the end, I decided to add some fresh cherry tomatoes. This is one of my favorite pastas to make, and it works well with frozen squash too. On Tuesday, I took the kids to the beach and was late coming home, so Chase made some butter chicken with rice and the last little bit of broccolini from my spring plants. On Wednesday, we're back with another pasta, but this time we're making a shrimp pesto penne with fresh basil from my garden. I started by roasting pine nuts and grating fresh Parmesan. In my food processor, I added garlic, the roasted pine nuts, and pulsed it a couple of times. Then I added my washed basil. I pulsed it for a couple more times. Then with the food processor on, I slowly added my olive oil. While the penne noodles were boiling, I diced up some garlic and onions and cut some cherry tomatoes in half. I sauteed the garlic and onions in a little bit of oil, then added my shrimp and cooked them until they were nice and pink. I seasoned everything with a little bit of salt and pepper and garlic powder. I took everything off of the heat and added my penne noodles, the fresh pesto, and fresh tomatoes. I added a little bit of pasta water until it was glazy. Then I topped everything with some fresh feta. I paired that with the leftover focaccia. This pasta was so good, and it's like peak summer for me with the fresh basil and the fresh tomatoes. On Thursday, we're doing a little bit of a Mediterranean night with some chicken skewers. And I harvested some fresh cherry tomatoes, basil, and cucumbers from the garden. I diced up my cucumbers and tomatoes and chopped up my basil and a little bit of garlic and onion. Then I mixed that with olive oil and balsamic vinegar. And usually I like to do some kind of cheese like feta or bocconcini. We didn't have either of those, so we went without, and honestly it was still delicious anyways. The tomatoes and cucumbers and basil have so much flavor in themselves. And I just added a bed of rice, added the chicken skewers on top, and then put the tomato and cucumber dish over top of the rice. On Friday, I made ginger chicken thighs with garlic crispy rice and purple bean. For the ginger chicken, I made a marinade with diced garlic and ginger, lemon juice, soy sauce, sesame oil, and cornstarch. I added my chicken thighs and let it marinate for a couple of hours or overnight. Then I put all of the chicken in a baking dish and added the marinade. Put it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. I took it out and poured the sauce over the chicken and put it back in the oven for another 20 minutes. I had some leftover rice from the day before. Wanted to do a garlic rice. Did a rough chop of the garlic and some diced onions and sauteed those. I added my cold rice and broke up any chunks. Then I added some butter, salt and pepper, and dried basil. I cooked the rice until it was nice and crispy. For my purple beans, I just boiled them in water for about 6 minutes. One thing about purple beans, they go from a really bright purple color to a really bright green color. It's actually really fun to watch them change color as they're cooking. I kept the beans simple with just some butter and salt and pepper. This ginger chicken dish is one of our family's favorite. On Saturday, we went to the beach, so I made my husband and I these amazing sandwiches with toasted sourdough and Boursin cheese on one side, the fresh pesto on the other side, fresh mozzarella, and hot salami with some lettuce that I really needed to use up. I wrapped them up in some parchment paper and then we headed to the beach. In my opinion, you can never go wrong with a good sandwich. And that's everything we ate for dinner last week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.